Welcome to the Clemson Dubcast. It is Monday, January 29th. Wow, what a recruiting weekend for Clemson. Dabo and the Tigers still in possession of that fastball, seems like. And so is Paul Strelo, for that matter. He's been killing it with coverage of all these recruiting developments. As always, TigerIllustrated.com is the place to be for recruiting junkies. So much to write about, so much to read about. My good friends Blake Smith and Brooke Archenhold have been part of the podcast since the beginning, way back in August of 2018. They have an accomplished team of personal injury attorneys at Parham, Smith, and Archenhold based in Greenville. They are Clemson people, and their skillful attorneys have decades of experience in complicated litigation matters, taking a special interest in medical malpractice, nursing home abuse, and neglect, car accident cases that have left the individuals involved in serious trouble. For a free consultation at Parham, Smith, and Archenhold, call 864-990-4581 or online at parhamlaw.com. That's PARHAM law.com. When you're ready for a complete renovation in your home or business, open the door to more with Harris Home and Harris Commercial. Their local experienced team will totally transform any room space, from beautiful floor coverings to construction to finished details. Harris handles every step of your renovation process, whether it's a kitchen or living room or an industrial or educational setting, like some of the positively stunning work they've done at Clemson University. Go to discoverharris.com and experience a total renovation transformation from Harris Home and Harris Commercial. Solero Communications, formerly known as Tandem Payment, is a full-service integrated electronic payments provider powered by leading-edge technology. Solero provides a wide array of merchant solutions, simplified payments. They make onboarding, taking payments, maintaining risk management and compliance, and getting support quick and easy. At Solero, they're all about helping you achieve sustainable growth as a business. Taking payments isn't the only thing your business needs. With Solero's solutions, you can manage inventory, sell products and services via social media, schedule staff, track sales, get reports, and much, much more. Find out more about Solero at solerocommerce.com. That's CELERO commerce.com. Okay, to the always entertaining Billy Davis, former Clemson Tiger, former NFL player, former Secret Service man. This guy is an endless trove of great stories. Here we go. Enjoy. All right, joined once again by Billy Davis, who is apparently in a hotel room in Lexington, Kentucky. How you doing, sir?
Great, sir. I'm glad to be part of your show again. It's been a while. I think you mentioned the last time we talked on your show, I was in Lexington. That was probably maybe a year or two ago. So it seems like I do most of my remote broadcasts from the bluegrass state.
You know, somebody like, I don't know, this might be the fifth time you've been on, but people, the casual listener or subscriber to Tiger Illustrated should not be expected to remember that. And so I forgot what conversation, what thread it was in on the message board, but somebody said, man, this Billy Davis guy is great. Larry, have you ever thought about having him on a podcast? And so I figure if it's been long enough where at least one person doesn't remember, then it's an opportune time to have you back on.
Sure, man. Yeah, I think there was a thread about the kid from Maury High School in Virginia and that committed to us, the defensive end, and I told a story about going to Maury High School back with the vice president. It was a remarkable story. I won't rehash it, but it's just how small of a world it is.
No, I'm going to get you to rehash it. We're going to get to that. Okay. But the most important thing is you got to give us an update on Sophie, your daughter, who we could probably spend the next 20 minutes on all of the accolades she has racked up. And so why don't you just brief everybody on her career at Kentucky and just such an impressive, not just athlete, but person that she has become and shown at UK and distinguishing herself in many ways.
Yeah, thanks, Larry. I appreciate you saying that. You know, your kids it's totally different than whatever you accomplish. And she's just a wonderful human being. And it's mostly not because she's an athlete, because the fact of the matter here at the University of Kentucky on the swim team, she's middle of the road at best. She's not a star. She's not an All-American swimmer. She's not even on all SEC performer athletically. She is academically, and she's a perfect 4.0 student. She's going to graduate summa cum laude. And she's working with the athletic department at the University of Kentucky as an intern in sports information and social media. So she's basically been with the football team for the last couple of years working with those guys. And then she's worked the last 2 years with the SEC network, ESPN SEC network, down on the sidelines, shadowing the sideline reporter, people like Andrea Carter. Some people may know her. And then she's been nominated for and received the Frank G. Ham Society of Character Award here at Kentucky.
Wow.
Which only goes to about 6 or 7 student athletes a year. And it's a combination of athletics, academics, service to the community, and leadership. It's a combination. And so she's going to have that award presented to her at halftime of the Ole Miss Kentucky basketball game at Rupp Arena. So, yeah, we're very proud of her. You know, I'd love selfishly for her to accomplish more athletically. But sometimes it's just like when I was at Clemson, I thought I was going to accomplish a lot more than I did individually at Clemson. And she certainly has outshined me as a student athlete at the University of Kentucky. So yeah, it's really exciting for us. And she's going to move on, and I think she's going to work for the Big Blue Nation Network this summer here in Kentucky, and then we'll see where that takes her. But, thanks for asking. I know it means a lot to you because you have daughters, and they're academically and athletically acclimated, or you know, in that vein, and that you have all that to look forward to as they decide on where they're going to go to college and compete at the next level.
It's such a hard decision, I guess, as you're trying to figure out where to go to school. You know, whether Sophie could have gone obviously somewhere smaller and been the best on the team.
Yes.
Dominated.
Yes. Yes.
She chose to go to Kentucky, where just the mix of everything is so complicated. And, you know, my oldest is a junior, and, you know, she's getting recruited. You know, Wake Forest has been talking to her for a while. Washington and Lee. But it's like she's sort of confronting that on the front end right now of, okay, I want to go somewhere. I don't want to go to somewhere where I'm the best. I want to go somewhere where I'm challenged, where there are better runners than I am. But I also want to go somewhere where I'm actually participating, right? So
correct.
And then you add in all the academics, and so it's like I'm at the point. Well, I mean, I guess I've always been at the point of, hey, man, you know all the dynamics of this a lot better than I do, and so you're going to have to be the one to make the decision. And so it's just interesting to hear, you know, that sort of her Sophie's story of I'm sure it was a stressful decision. And can you just take us back to what all elements played into it when she was figuring out where to go?
Yeah, I mean, she was probably like your daughters. I mean, she was an All-American in high school, which means you're one of the top 100 swimmers in your stroke in the country in high school. And there's approximately 75,000 young ladies that swim high school swimming in the United States. So that's an elite group of people. But she was recruited by all the Ivy League schools. She was recruited by all the academies. She was only not recruited by like a handful of schools like Stanford, Texas. I mean, the elite top 5 programs in the country, and they pick and choose. It's kind of like, okay, in football, you're recruited by North Carolina, NC State, Wake Forest, Georgia Tech, but you know, Alabama and Georgia aren't recruiting you. It's no slap. They usually get the pick of the litter. So anyway, she was not interested. She went to an all-girls private school in Northern Virginia, and even though she just wanted to compete at the highest levels of athletics, she just came out here to Kentucky and fell in love with it. And we really did not get involved. And we've discussed this too. It's not like when I got recruited to play football at Clemson, where, you know, we had one phone on the wall in the house, and every coach that called had to call 703-780-6048. And usually my mom or dad would answer the phone, and they would screen the phone call. Say it was Coach Williams from the University of Miami, and I'm in the I'm sitting there in the kitchen and I look at my mom and I'm like, I'm not here. I don't want to talk to him, and she'd screen the phone call and move on. Well, now these kids, these kids, they have total contact. You're not even involved in it. They have, emails, text messages, and these coaches go right to the student athlete, and the parents are basically cut out of the whole process unless you insert yourself. It's very difficult to insert yourself in your children's life when they're 16, 17, 18 years old, because you want them to grow as a human being and as a student athlete, which they're going to face when they go off to college. But in the meantime, I talk to Sophie and I go, hey, who'd you talk to last night? And she'd go, well, I talked to Florida and LSU. And I go, well, what did they say? And she would say, well, the same old thing. I'm like, well, what does that mean? The same old thing. So I think a lot of parents have run into that you just, it's a problem, and you're going to see it. And so you have to trust that they make the right decision. Kentucky really recruited her hard all over her summer between her sophomore and junior year. And lo and behold, she committed to the University of Kentucky 3 weeks into her junior year of high school. And so we didn't have to worry about going through any of that process. It was a done deal, signed, sealed, and delivered. And that was her decision. It wasn't ours. Totally 110% her decision. And that's when things sometimes don't go their way or what you expect. They, can't turn around and go, well, you wanted me to go here. You forced me to go here. So I think you'll run into that.
So she definitely wants to go into broadcasting, television broadcasting.
She's a broadcast journalism major, and they have a great program here at the University of Kentucky. So she's done everything from for the University of Kentucky, the media department. They have their own University of Kentucky news channel. So she's not only been behind the desk as an anchor, she's been out in Lexington itself reporting. She has produced, she's directed, she's been behind the camera, she's done all that stuff. And then I've sent you the video she's done with the football team, and she's interviewed, the American Idol winner from last year is a university, and that is from Kentucky. And he sang the national anthem at the Tennessee-Kentucky game back in October, and she did a 5 questions and 50 yards with the American Idol winner. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where she's going. So hopefully, if there's anybody out there that is listening to this podcast that wants a really sharp kid who's, really pretty, that wants to work, she's looking into working for the SEC ESPN network as a paid intern in Charlotte too. She's applying for that. So if I have any hooks out there that can help me with that, if you're listening, Larry will give you my number. So anyway, That's what she wants to do. We'll see how it goes. I never, some people are like, she's never going to do that. I said, well, you have no idea what anybody's going to do. It's amazing how people want to rain on your parade sometimes. When you let these kids chase their dreams, and if it doesn't work out or if she finds another avenue to do, that's what she's going to do. But right now, that's what and I try to encourage her to stay involved in the athletics side of the house, even working, at the University of Kentucky's in the athletic department, which you can't go wrong there with Mr. Barnhart. Mitch Barnhart's the AD. Last year he was voted the most powerful man in the SEC, even more powerful than Nick Saban, because he's the longest tenured athletic director in the Southeastern Conference. So good man, and he has a lot of connections. So we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
You have an interesting perspective, obviously, Clemson man. Probably over the years, over the long term, you've, sort of scoffed at the SEC's just sort of self-importance, I guess, lack of a better term. But you've spent several years sort of with a closer look at that whole thing. And just in some of our conversations over the years, it sounds like you have a perspective of, not that you're Mr. SEC or anything, I'm not saying that, but you're like, yeah, it kind of, in a lot of respects, it does, I hate to say this, mean more.
Well, they've just done an excellent job of marketing. I don't think anybody can disagree with that. And I know we've had that conversation. They just do an excellent job of marketing, and they've been able to over the years. And and let's face it too, a lot of the schools in the Southeastern Conference are very much like Clemson. They have a chip on their shoulder, whether it's the University of Kentucky or Auburn or Alabama or Mississippi State or Ole Miss. They're sometimes just like the people in the ACC look down their noses at Clemson. We're the Cal College. That's the way we were back then. It's a little different now, but when I was in school, we were just looked down as the country cousins that wore orange overalls and drove tractors around. I mean, you go down the list of schools: North Carolina, Wake Forest, UVA, Duke. They would look down their nose at us, and I think the SEC uses sports as their way of a lot of pride, and you see it in all the sports here at the University of Kentucky. It's very much like Clemson. They take a lot of pride and they put a lot of money into it, and you can see the emphasis. Where I go to some of the other schools in different conferences, and it's just not that way. And that's just me seeing it as a 62-year-old dude that's been around the block twice and seen it all, and I can see what they talk about when sometimes it just means. I mean, sometimes they're over the top with it, but I think a lot of it has to do with marketing and just being down south and the pride folks take into it, just like they do at Clemson. They take a lot of pride in their sports, and if your sports programs are good, we've had this discussion many times, Larry, then your academic side of the house is going to be bolstered. Just like at Clemson, where, last year they had 66,000 applications for the freshman class. I mean, it's incredible. But, yeah, to your point, they've done an excellent job of marketing here at the University of Kentucky, wherever you go. I mean, they treat all the athletes like thoroughbred racehorses, and they don't want for anything. I don't care if the swim and dive team, the football team, the basketball team, the baseball team, all the facilities are first class, and all the support systems they have for the student athletes are first class. Like here at Kentucky, they had actually the first student athlete support system standalone building in the country. It was built back here in like the 70s, way before anybody else had it. So, they do a really good job. So, I mean, I'm a Clemson guy first and foremost, and but I'll give a conference its due when it comes to things of that nature. And they do a great job of athletic support and making it a priority. So that's all I can say about that. It's a good question.
You mentioned a few minutes ago the different nature of recruiting, and parents aren't as involved, and then coaches go straight to the prospect. It's interesting looking at Dabo's formula for recruiting as evidenced just today, actually, just the last few days. Yep. As you see, they have their big recruiting weekend and some big commitments. And you see how often Paul Strelo is, in his reporting, is talking about how the parents were involved and how impressed they were with this or that. And not that Dabo's way is old-fashioned or anything, but it's still interesting to me, at least, that here in 2024, and I think it will endure, you're always going to have the situation of a family that, they still want their son to get to get an education, to get a degree. They're thinking about life beyond football. And so it seems like as much as things have changed and will continue to change over the last few years and over the upcoming few years, it's hard for me to believe that the idea of parents still getting some resonance from the more holistic parts of a college experience, a college choice of a recruit, that's still going to have some capital, I guess you could say, for lack of a better word. You agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just like when Soph took her visit here to Kentucky. I mean, my wife and I were on campus, and my wife was on campus for about an hour while she was at practice. And she walked around. So this place is great. I could go here in a minute. And you actually have to have buy-in from the parents. That's for sure. I think swim and dive or cross country, track and field is a little bit different flavor to it than say football because of the money involved and NIL and all these other things that you have to deal with now. And it's been written by some of your posters on TI, which I totally agree with. That I think Coach Swinney was put behind the 8 ball with COVID, and that you weren't allowed to visit on campus, and a lot of those things that transpired in those 12 to 24 months really put the Clemson program behind the 8 ball, because that is the value of Clemson football. Like you said, the whole holistic approach and bringing mom and dad and brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles on campus and showing them how, and Dabo gives the 2 hour to 2 hour and a half speech on his life story. And which is not even a made for TV movie. It could be in the cinemas. And once people hear that and they hear his passion and how he cares for the kids and how he will ensure that he's going to take care of their sons, it resonates with a lot of people. And some people it doesn't resonate with. Some people it's all about the money. How much you're going to give, and we see it all the time. But there's a kind of kid that is attracted to the Clemson program. That's always been that way since Dabo has been there. And I think it always will be that way as long as he's there. And if you can just get that core kid in there and keep him for those 3, 4, 5 years, be red shirts, and keep that whole thing rolling, I think they might come out of this whole COVID-19 6th year, super senior, 7th year, triple super senior thing and get back to where they were. But yeah, I mean, this weekend, you guys kept me up to date on what was happening, for this elite junior weekend. And it seems like they've done a really good job. And he's gone out and hired, Garrett Riley. He's gone out and hired Matt Luke. He's gone out and, brought Chris Rumpf back. Nick Eason's there. So there's a lot of guys with a lot of experience, and that's going to appeal to a lot of kids. And kids want to go, and I think they sell the point, you got to be developed. You get a lot of raw material, but you want to go there and be developed over 3 or 4 or 5 years. And, and now the guy that stressed the process, he's retired. The guy down in Tuscaloosa, the guy that now the guy that beat that guy twice in a national championship game is still coaching, and he has a process, and he's selling his process. So that's the beauty of that.
One of the things I admire and respect about you is, while you are unquestionably a Dabo guy, you were one of the few on that island back in 2000.
Was lonely, that's for sure.
Maybe by yourself on that island in 2010 when things were sour, and the vast majority of people had major questions about whether he was just even capable of leading a program, a successful program, let alone multiple national championships, 6 straight playoff, whatever. But
no one could have predicted that.
Yeah, right. But you were firmly in his camp then. But on the other hand, you're not such a fanboy. You're not such a Dabo fanboy that you're beyond, that you're blind from your own perspective of, voicing some misgivings. And hey, I mean, this past season, even on the message board, you had some questions maybe and some criticisms.
Sure.
So with all that said, that said, what have you learned about Dabo over the last, 2 months? Because I guess we'll start with early November, when there was lots of turmoil, lots of questions from both you and I, lots of skepticism, and he behind the scenes made a pretty definitive turn toward basically, y'all got 24 days to prove that you deserve your jobs, essentially, and not just for the coaches either, but for players as well. And then that extends to the decisions to part ways with Lemansky Hall Thomas Austin, which that decision certainly cannot be taken lightly. Dabo was sitting on Thomas Austin's shoulders.
Right.
The 2008 South Carolina game that basically got Dabo the job for good.
Yep. I have that picture in my house somewhere.
Yep. Yeah, I think it was, was it Austin and Grisham? Or it might have been.
Yeah, it was Grisham and Thomas Austin, right? He's up on his shoulders. Yep. I've got it. It was like on the front page of the Orange and White.
Yep.
And I've got it on framed in a poster somewhere in my house. Yeah. So
I guess my point is, what I'm getting at is you learn a lot more about people, I think, when the chips are down than you do when they're going 15-0. And I'm curious what you learned about Dabo over the last couple of months.
Right. Yeah. Anybody's, we're all front runners. Everybody likes to be 15-0 and win championships. And if you do remember, though, and I caught a lot of flack from it when they lost. Did they lose to Miami first or then NC State?
Miami, then NC State.
Yeah. So they lose to NC State. And I got on the message board on Saturday night and I said, I fully expect Clemson to play their most complete football game of the year against Notre Dame on Saturday. Yep. And I got blasted. People, you're out of your mind. You've been drinking. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, have another drink. You're crazy. I never answered. But then when they beat Notre Dame, I was right. Boy, this sure is tasty. I said, because I know how athletes are, and I know what I just know. And it's just, and I know what it's like to be backed into a corner and you come out fighting. And that's how Dabo's always been the underdog. He plays the underdog role. That's what Clemson has always, and we all know that Clemson is better when we're the underdog. We don't do well when we're running out front. That's just the nature of our university. It always has been. We've always had, when I was at Clemson back in the dark ages in the early 80s, we were the Palmetto Bad Boys. We always played with a chip on our shoulder because everyone looked down on us. They put us on probation because we were winning too much. That's how Coach Ford was, and that's how Dabo is. And so I don't know if I learned anything more about Dabo or it was just confirmed what I've believed about him since I first saw him coaching at Clemson back in the mid-2000s, is that the dude is going to find a way to overcome obstacles. That's just in his DNA. Now, he's not going to win all the time, but like I often say, I do not bet against him in the long run. It was just like, I laughed when he said, if you buy Clemson stock, you better buy it now. I mean, that's him.
Yeah.
Right. That's been Dabo Swinney. And, it's just like when they played, I'll never forget when they played Alabama in 2018, Trevor, when they win the national, and they just pummeled them out. And as Dabo says, wherever the heck we are in California, when no one gave Clemson a chance, people forget, everyone to a man and woman said that was the best. Yep. Alabama was the best college, not just Alabama team, possibly the best college football team of all time.
Yep.
That's what they were saying. I walked in the gym back home and people were like, Clemson's going to get mauled. There's no way they're going to be. And I'm like, okay, well, you're probably right. I guess we'll see. And they just blasted them. And I mean, and then the Sports Illustrated came out, it said Dabo's, do you remember the one? It said Dabo's Dynasty with a picture of, I think it was Christian Wilkins and Justin Ross on the cover. Dabo's Dynasty. I mean, it's amazing. And then, the 19 goes and they go undefeated all the way until they ran into that buzzsaw with Joe Burrow. I mean, and then everything changes. Then you have COVID, then you have a messed up season. And then, and then it kind of takes a downward turn. To your point, everybody can be in front. It's easy to win, but when you get your teeth kicked in, are you going to jump off the mat, rearrange, restructure your priorities and get back into the fight? And I mean, it's just like in my job in the Secret Service, we trained all the time when I was a counterterrorism guy. I mean, we would get attacked all the time. We call it immediate action drills, where the instructors and other guys would ambush our motorcade with RPGs, explosive, all kinds of explosions and fires and everything. That's how you see how you would react to it. You drop your gun and give up, or you have to, return the fight. That's just the way it is. And that's how Dabo's always been. So to your point, I don't think I learned anything about him. I just think it confirmed what I'd already believed about him. And, like you said, were we critical? Well, yeah. I mean, when things aren't going well, it's just like, I'm sure, you can definitely criticize your wife sometimes if things aren't going right. I mean, we criticize, hopefully constructively criticize the people that we love and that we care about. And, you might want to think about doing it this way this time. Or, you might want to look about, maybe getting a kid or two out of the portal. Or you might want to do this or that. But in the end, he's going to do it his way. And it might just turn out to be, in the long run, the best way, because I don't know how long this whole NIL basically just paying players is sustainable, because that's not exactly, from my interpretation, how this thing was supposed to be set up. If I was, playing at Clemson and they had my, Billy Davis number 24 and they were selling Billy Davis jerseys, well, okay, I get a cut of that, right? Whatever, give me 5%. Or I go on for Toyota Veasley and I do a commercial for Toyota Veasley. Well, I get paid for that. Not just stroking me a check for $2 million to play quarterback. And I think it's been totally run the wrong way, and it's out of control. And the NCAA is just like the state trooper that's just sitting on the side of the road and letting everybody drive 120 miles an hour down I-85. There's no law enforcement whatsoever, other than maybe what Florida State got. So
yeah, I mean,
it's just crazy.
Well,
I don't even, it's just crazy. And I called a buddy of mine at Clemson, who's coach there. Well, I'm not going to give up his name, but most people probably know what I'm talking about. But I said, dude, what would it cost? Say Billy Davis, I was the number one recruit in the state of Virginia my senior year. How much is my scholarship worth, just scholarship, or all my benefits that I receive as a student athlete at Clemson University if I was coming to Clemson this year? He said, I got the paper right here in front of me. It's between $160,000 and $170,000 a year.
Yeah.
That's what football players' total benefit package is worth. Just that's not counting NIL. That's just counting tuition, room and board, food, books, strength training, medical, dental, all the things that they get. I mean, it's amazing what a student athlete gets, and that's what the value is for 1 year. Somebody goes, well, that's not much. I said, no, that's not 4 years. That's 1 year. So then you multiply that times 4 or 5. You're talking, upwards of $750,000 to $1 million of value. And people act like, well, we're getting taken advantage of. I'm like, oh my goodness. I think, and that's what Dabo espouses, right? And I think that's why Dabo got kind of a bad rap. He's like, well, wait a minute. You don't value this, but and I understand, should these student athletes get some kind of compensation? Yes. But I think, like, for instance, a guy like Sam Hartman, how much return in investment did Notre Dame get out of Sam Hartman this year?
For a while, some pretty good return, but yeah.
Yep. So was he really worth the money they paid him to go 9-3 and play in the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl? Think about it.
That's a good question.
No, yeah. And, he's a good kid and everything, but here's Dave Clawson, who brings him in as, and Hartman was probably a 3-star quarterback, I'd imagine. They develop him. He has a great career at Wake Forest, and Wake Forest is, they benefit by, see you later. I'm gone. It's like marrying a girl and then, taking care of her. And then, she gets in shape and gets a hair, and becomes beautiful. And then she meets the next guy down the road and just up and leaves you. I'm moving on to something better. And then these folks at Notre Dame are stroking these checks for these guys to go 9-3. I mean, I don't know how much they're paying Riley Leonard, but I'm sure I think Hartman was making $800,000 or $900,000, something like that, to go 9-3.
Well, on the other hand, you have and this has been going on for years and years and years. When a coach, when a team doesn't win as much as expected, and then a coach gets paid $15 million to sit on his couch, was that worth it? So it's like, it's all we're still talking about market value, I guess, loosely. I guess my point is there's no way, as much as valid as what you talked about is about the value of a scholarship not really being enough of the conversation that we're having. I've been saying that for years. As valid as that is, that toothpaste just is out of the tube and it's not getting put back.
No, it's never coming back. It's never. No, you're absolutely right. But it's just the values in society have changed, and I'm 62 years old, so I'm old. I mean, I'm eligible for Social Security, which that's sobering enough in itself. But when I went to Clemson, I was just happy to have air conditioning in my dorm room and 4 meals a day. And they were paying for my school. Because I grew up, my story. I grew up in a 900 square foot house without air conditioning. And for 3 of those years, I slept in the dining room because we had 6 other people in the house. And, my dad worked in a grocery store and was a mailman. We didn't have a whole lot. I had a lot of love in the house. But so I went to Clemson. I was like, man, they're actually giving me an education, and I get to play in Death Valley on TV occasionally. Back then you may be on 3 or 4 times a year at most. The value system, and I see what other student athletes like our daughter, who practices twice a day, who, and in between lifts weights, who goes to class, who has a 4.0, and they swim against Louisville this weekend. And it was a big match. Louisville's a big rival, right? Them Tennessee. We maybe had, I don't know, 400 people at the meet. They had the pep band there and everything at the University of Louisville, but they do it for no other reason than for their love of the sport and for, swimming is really not a team sport. It's kind of like what your daughters do. I mean, it's team sport, but it's really not. It's all about your individual time. And they like to paint it to be a team, but most of it is very individual as opposed to football. But anyway, it's just, I understand it though. I mean, like you said, the toothpaste is out of the tube. It ain't coming back. It's just that there has to be some kind of rules and regulations, because, I mean, I tell people, look, I was in 3 NFL training camps in 2 years. I was cut 3 different times by 2 teams. Then I got to Denver as an undrafted free agent, and I went there at minicamp, and I was running. It was all the rookies, so there was like 3 other free safeties there. So you get to training camp, there's like 6 dudes in front of me in training camp, and I'm like, unless there's a nuclear disaster or something, I'm not beating all these guys out. It's almost physically impossible to do. You just look at it and go, I don't know what I'm going to do here. And I could, okay, I'm leaving. I'm going to hit the transfer portal. And I'm going to go to Buffalo. You can't do that in the NFL. You got to get cut. And then you have to hope somebody picks you up. You just can't go into the transfer portal and decide, I don't like being here with the Giants. I don't like it. I'm going to go in the transfer portal and maybe the Rams will pick me up. It's crazy.
Well, that's just it. I mean, it's kind of crazy to say that the solution, and it can't get here fast enough, I think most people agree, is actual revenue sharing, pay for play, just because it's a 2-way contract. That's what people
should be. There's a guy, I can't remember, another poster on Tiger Illustrated. He's not the only one, but I mean, just do a 3-year contract.
Yeah.
Billy Davis has signed a 3-year contract with Clemson University. You're locked in for 3 years. And your 4th year is your option. If you want to go and hit the transfer portal after your junior year, you're more than welcome to do that. You can become a free agent, or you can, take your option year and stay at Clemson. But there's got to be, that has to be, just to make it just like the NFL, because that's what I call it now. It's NFL intercollegiate. That's the name. That's what it is now. I mean, if you're getting paid, and let's face it too, if you ain't cutting the mustard, let's do it this way too. It's two-way street, right? I signed with Clemson, and I ain't making the top two, and I'm third or fourth string, and I'm not cutting the mustard. Then I got the ability to put you on waivers. If you want to be a pro, and you want to have all that, just like it is, professionally, just like I was with Denver and St. Louis, and they bring you in and go, hey, look, appreciate everything you've done, appreciate your effort, but we don't have any room for you. See you later. But that's, you can't have it all, and then you can't have all those benefits and on the contract and everything and think you're just going to show up and not perform, right? It should be if you want to be a performance-based and play in that like, you want to be an NFL guy, you want to be a pro, well, this is how the pros work. It's not you sign a contract and you can just sit there. Like we used to have guys at Clemson that, like Coach Ford said, all he's doing is eating our food right now. He's not doing anything. He's just eating it. You can't do that. You either perform or you're done, right? Or if you're not getting the grades you need to get, there should be stipulations right in the contract. And it's like, boom, hey, they bring you in and go, hey, Larry, appreciate what you've done, appreciate your devotion, but, we're going to have to ask you to leave. Is that what because that's what it's going to have to be. You can't have all that and then underperform. So
I think it was Kirby.
Pro, that's how the pros work.
Yeah, I think it was Kirby Smart who suggested a few weeks ago, I think I'm getting the gist of this, you could either do a 3-year, which is two-way, it's good for 3 years, but you have to stay there for 3 years, right? Or you sign up for 1 year, and you can either leave after 1 year, but the school has the option of cutting you too after 1 year. So it's a two-way thing, which I can get behind that.
Yeah, I do too. Well, that's kind of like what I was saying. Is you said it better and Kirby said it better than me. That's why he's the head football coach at the University of Georgia. But I would be totally in for that, because everybody wants to be a pro. Everybody wants to get paid and make the money and drive the nice cars. But being a pro is totally different than high school and college. It's a totally different world. And I lived in that world. And it's not, you hang on every time you go to, like when I was at Clemson, I knew that I was going to be playing on Saturday. I mean, I'd be playing a lot the first couple of years, but I was going to be playing. When you go to training camp and mini camp in the NFL, you don't know if you're going to be there by the afternoon. They bring you in and go, hey, you're done. Hey, you need to go see Coach Reeves. Bring your playbook. And they go, hey, appreciate you coming, but hope to see you again on another sideline. But can we have your playbook? And here's your plane ticket home. If that's what they want to be. Then I think it's got to be that way, and it's heading down that road. And like I said, you said toothpaste out of the tubes, cats out of the bag. But yeah, that's the way it's going to have to be for football and college basketball as well. I'm seeing these guys. What is that one kid at Miami? He's like on his 9th year. What's going on with that? I mean. I think I was in the Secret Service by the time I had 9 years from Clemson. Jeez. I mean, dude, just time to move on. Go get you a job. If you've been playing 9 years in college and you're not playing in the NFL or the CFL yet, I think the writing's on the wall.
Do you remember, I think it was in the 90s, maybe 80s and 90s, when Clemson basketball, during the time they were really good. I forget exactly when, but they would always, for games at Little John on TV, they would show the fans right behind the basket, which, or I guess maybe, they were behind the basket, even under the old situation, because they had the little bleachers for the students.
Yeah.
But it was the same dude. I mean, I'm talking for like years and years and years. He was the same student, would be in the camera. And I think I remember hearing that dude, he was at Clemson for 7 years, I believe. And that seemed like a really long time. Crazy. I do want to get back to the Dabo question. What did we learn? All that. I guess what I'm getting at is, if we take ourselves back to the moment, in the aftermath of the loss at NC State and what we were saying, what a lot of people were saying, I think it centered on, so with Dabo, there's that push and pull between cutthroat competitor, right? And set in his ways and maybe stubborn, not too strong of a word, just really strongly believes in his way. And his way has included, as we know, hiring, making unconventional hires, hiring within the program, that whole thing. I do think that one of the questions or criticisms, I guess more question back then, was, is he such a cutthroat competitor that he's going to be able to make the tough decisions? Or is he so set in his ways where he won't be able to have enough foresight or wisdom to make the tough decisions? That pretty much encapsulates what we were talking about back then, right?
Yeah, and I guess time has proven that. Yeah, he'll make the tough decision to let Thomas Austin go and hire Matt Luke. I mean,
right.
that's yeah, but it's time when you're because the expectations. But what did I tell you back in the spring? I texted you and I said, mark it down, ambush in Durham.
Yep.
Duke will beat Clemson, and you were like pissed. I go, I'm serious, dude. I said, they got a good quarterback. It's just a recipe for disaster. And sure enough, I mean, I could just see it happening because I've lived that life. And, I'm looking, you're right in Clemson and you're around the program every day. So you're immersed in it, where I am living in Northern Virginia, and my only really contact, other than occasionally texting Coach Swinney or Coach McCorvey down there, is what you and Paul and Chris produce on Tiger Illustrated. But I can also see it from watching ball games and stuff. And so with Dabo, after that NC State loss, I mean, everybody was like, what in the world? What's going on? That's when they were talking about them possibly playing, for making the college football playoff. But I don't think they took into account. I think everyone thought Cade would probably be a little bit better this year than he was, but they, didn't take into account he really didn't play at all as a freshman. And then, he's thrust into that starting role as a sophomore. But in Dabo's case, as far as what you originally mentioned, the problem is he's been so successful that sometimes when you're that successful, you're not going to be able to self-evaluate as easily as if you were kind of a middle of the road guy and take criticism and try to build on that. So, I mean, the proof's in when all you have to go is the Reeves Center and see the trophies and all the accolades. And so that makes it difficult, even with Coach Saban, as everyone knows. I think if you see why he retired, a lot of it has to do with the state of college football, the way it is right now. And he always had a process, and now that process is basically, it's kind of hard to get people to stay. So I think, and that's what I was worried about Coach Swinney, but I think Coach Swinney is just enough a competitor and just a hard-nosed dude that he's gonna prove people wrong, just like he did after the 2010 season. I think that's just how he's wired. And that's what a lot of great competitors. I mean, I had people tell me, well, you'll never play baseball at Clemson. And I walked onto the program after not playing baseball for 3 years, and first game of the year I was starting at left field. And sometimes I look back and I think a lot of what I did was just to prove people wrong, just to show them, oh, I'll show you. Even that's just whether it's football coaches or whoever said, there's no way you're not that, you can't. And I go, and I think, so I understand how Dabo's wired in that way. I tell people all the time, you'll never be in the Secret Service. You're too stupid to be in the Secret. I actually, people at Clemson tell me, you're too stupid to be in the Secret Service. Really?
Really?
Okay, I'll show you. And rose to the highest levels of the organization. And I to this day, I do things. I just go out to do things to prove people that I can do it. And it's the challenge part of it. And I think that's what motivates Dabo. He's been told his whole life, and he's been given I relate to Dabo a lot. His dad was a raging alcoholic. My mom, raging alcoholic. I mean, just never knew from day to day how she's going to be when we came home from school. if she was going to be sober, if she was going to go throw things, who never knew. And so I kind of grew up in that same kind of environment. And that's how I can relate to when you grow up in that environment, in that kind of household. And my mom was great, a very loving parent, just like his dad was. But when you grow up in that kind of environment, it creates that drive to get out of it and to prove things to people and not let things don't be overcome by your circumstances, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why I like him so much, because I can relate to him. I certainly don't make $11 million a year or $10 million a year like he does, but I can certainly relate to his attitude and his stubbornness and his willingness to attempt to prove people wrong and show them that he will overcome these circumstances. And I think that's the position he's in right now. And it's the wheel's starting to turn again for Clemson football, just based on this recruiting class, only the class, I guess it's 25 now that they're recruiting, getting commitments from. It's hard to believe 2025. My goodness.
Upstate foodies, want to take a moment to talk to you about our favorite taco spot, Willie Taco. 5 locations across the upstate. This award-winning team has been serving up fresh taco fusion for a solid decade now. The chefs at Willie Taco utilize the freshest, most creative, and sometimes unexpected ingredients in their kitchens. Come see why Southern Living, Garden and Gun, and Food and Wine Magazine are raving about Willie Taco and their signature offerings, such as their Southern Tide, crispy avocado, Nashville hot chicken tacos, literally flavors you will not find anywhere else, folks. And don't forget about the cocktails. Super fresh margaritas, ice cold cerveza, and over 80 tequilas served up daily from behind the bar. So don't wait, folks. Your Willie Taco Familia is ready to serve you up their twist on funky, fresh fusion. It's the Willie way. Another loyal supporter of the Dubcast is Blackacre Law Firm in Greenville, a subsidiary of Parham Smith and Archenhold. Blackacre helps South Carolina residents achieve their dreams of home ownership by providing experienced professional representation for real estate closings. Attention to detail is crucial in real estate law. Blackacre is committed to making sure nothing gets by them preparing residential or commercial closings. Blackacre also offers estate planning services for their clients in the Greenville area. Find out more about Blackacre at 864-326-3507. Want to share a quick word about Founders Federal Credit Union? If you've been to a sporting event in Clemson, you've probably heard about Founders already. They are the official credit union partner of the Clemson Tigers. In addition to that, all Clemson faculty, staff, and students are eligible for membership as well as IPTAY members. Its office is located beside the Walmart Neighborhood Market on Old Greenville Highway in Clemson. For more information, go to foundersfcu.com. All right, you justifiably bragged on yourself for forecasting what happened in Durham. I got to ask now.
Thank you. I take credit.
You do, of course, 100%. Because I didn't see it.
Not pleased at all, but I saw it coming a mile away.
What do you see coming in Atlanta, I have to ask, on August 31st?
Oh, man, I knew you were going to ask this question. I've got a great answer for you, because it reminds me, and I know people, do we have to hear about this again? Yes, folks, you do. 1980. We finished 6-5, right? We were lucky to finish 6-5. We lost to Duke at home. We barely beat Virginia on an Obed Ariri 52-yard field goal with like 6 seconds left to beat Virginia. We struggled to beat Western Carolina. We lost to Georgia down in Athens, 20-16. The only saving grace was we ended up beating South Carolina in Clemson with a famed Willie Underwood game where we wore the orange pants for the first time ever. So the next year, we opened up with Wofford because Villanova had dropped their football program. And then we went down to Tulane and played them. But the bottom line was we had to play Georgia, who was defending national champions, in Clemson. And no one gave us a shot. Not even, they had Buck Ballou and they had Lindsey Scott and they had number 34 in the backfield. They had, their defense was phenomenal, Tommy Thurston and those guys, and no one around campus none of the professors, nobody on TV, radio, print newspapers back in the day gave us a shot, and we ended up beating Georgia. So I haven't really researched it that much on who Georgia has coming back. I know they're loaded. They have their quarterback coming back, but I will reserve my prediction on that for a later date. But I'm actually more positive going into that game, believe it or not, than I was Clemson going up to Duke, because Clemson is always better as the underdog.
Yeah.
Clemson's always better as the underdog. And Dabo Swinney is always better as the underdog. And so don't you think he's going to be playing that tune I'm sure he's playing it right now. And those guys have it circled. And the great thing is they can go, and even if they do somehow lose to Georgia, it's not the end of the year. It's not the end of the season. You've got 11 more ball games to play. And with this 12-team playoff, you're not automatically eliminated. If you lose one more, you lose 2 games, you're done. Now with a 12-team playoff, if you win the ACC and win the championship game, you got a legit shot of making it, into the playoffs. And then once the playoff starts, how about those games yesterday? Who'd have thought the Ravens just imploded?
Yeah.
They didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Right? And everybody said, the Ravens are going to the Super Bowl. Right? Go back a month ago.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody's going to beat the Ravens, right? They're going to lock. The Ravens are a lock for the Super Bowl. They froze.
Yep.
They froze on their home field.
Totally.
Totally. What were they thinking? Lamar Jackson, they went 11 personnel like 62% of the time throwing the football. They had the best running game keep running the football. What are you doing?
Billy,
and then unbelievable.
Their running backs had 6 carries.
I know. It's crazy, but that's playoff football, right? And that's why I'm excited about the Division I actually going and having playoff. Well, you hear the guys going, well, it'll be a waste of time no. And some teams are better, especially in college. These kids are gelling at the end of the year. 19-year-old kids become 20-year-old kids, and 21-year-old kids become 22-year-old kids, and they gel and they mature, and they're playing their best football at the end of the year. Clemson was playing some pretty good football at the end of the year after they beat Notre Dame. They actually kind of turned the corner. You never know. But then you got the 49ers, right? The Lions, with that offense they had, they're up 17 at the half and they lose. How do you do that? That's playoff football. So, anyway. I'm excited to see that.
Speaking of old stories from the old days, you mentioned on the message board a few weeks ago at the 83 game in Columbia. I guess y'all were wearing face masks back then, right?
No, they were plastic. they were the plastic ones. Hadn't gone to the full face mask, or the plastic ones. Some guys did, not all of it. I didn't wear a face mask, but some guys did. Yeah.
But you said, I don't know if you might have shared this story before, but you said our entire team, after the win over South Carolina in Columbia in 83, a butt chewing due to the bench clearing brawl at the end of the game. That was the whole enchilada for the 1983 version of the Tigers, but I digress. Yep. All right. What's that story?
So, yeah, we were on that whole story, the 83 season. Like I said, it's Clemson football in 1983 is the mystery team that no one talks about. It's almost like this crazy uncle that you have to deal with that we lock away in the closet at Clemson, and no one ever wants to talk about the 83 team. We went 9-1-1, undefeated in the ACC, beat the ACC champion Maryland Terrapins in Clemson 52-27, totally dominated them. Went down to South Carolina the next week, beat South Carolina. And at the end of the game, we were running out the clock, and Jeff Litton, who was one of our centers, he was jaw-jacking with Ricky Haygood, I think. I can't remember the guy's name.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a nose guard. Well, Haygood just reaches over and rips Litton's helmet off his head and starts swinging it at him. And then both bench clearing brawl. It wasn't as bad as the 2004 brawl in Clemson, but it was pretty bad. Both benches empty, running the field, pushing and shoving, kicking, biting. Now at the time I was dating a girl that was a cheerleader at South Carolina. So I was not a fighter. I was a lover. So I was running across the field to say hey to her. And I'll never forget because Coach Ford like grabbed me and go, "Where are you going?" And I pointed and he goes, "Go ahead." So I went over, I went right around the melee to see her. And then anyway, the troopers were out there, pulled everybody apart. We went back to our locker room and, Coach Ford, just chewed on us. "I never want to see that beep, beep, beep again." But and how is that? Going on and on about how embarrassed, blah, blah, blah. And we got undressed, put our civvies back on, got on the bus, went back. Well, I stayed in Columbia, but the team went back to Clemson, and that was it. And that was the end of our season. There was no awards banquet. There was no nothing. It was just, that was my last football game in a Clemson Tiger uniform was in Columbia, and that's how it ended. And it was just like, and even Coach Ford has said, I've seen it in interviews that he says he doesn't really remember much about the '83 season. And I think that's, everybody tries to just put it out of their mind because we were on total probation, no TV, no bowl game, no conference championship. And so it goes back to what I talk about too is, we played for each other, our coaches, our parents, and Clemson. And I know that sounds so sappy and so corny, but that's all we had to play for. That was it. And because we weren't on TV, we weren't going to win a championship. And Coach Ford rode us like rented mules, man. I remember we went up to Duke and squeaked by Duke up there, and I blew a coverage, and guy got in behind me for a touchdown. And it wasn't. I was trying to jump a crossing route because Ben Bennett was the quarterback back at Duke, and I was playing safety, and I jumped a crossing route by the tight end, and he threw in behind me for a touchdown. Well, I got and back then Coach Ford would have a list up in Shaletter on the door. And if you were on that list, you were screwed. You walk down and see Billy Davis, see Coach Ford at 1:00, and you're like, oh no. Then you'd have to go over to Jervy and walk into his office and see Gene Roach, who was his secretary, and here to see Coach Ford take a seat. It was like going to the oral surgeon, like, oh no. And then go in and he would chew on you, and he did that every week for that year. It was the only year I remember him doing that. And it was just because he was trying to gain control of something that there, and a bunch of guys that we were playing every game just for Clemson and for our teammates. There was zero gold at the end of the rainbow other than personal pride and playing for your school. And now I see what it's evolved into about pay for play. And if you're not paying me as much, I'm going to go somewhere else. And I think this kid's really, the kids that are jumping from school to school, Larry, I think really, and in the end, when they get to be my age, they're going to look back and they're probably going to be out of that money that they made, more than likely. And they're not going to have any connection to their university. They're just basically mercenaries now. And I think that's what Dabo sees too. I think he wants the holistic approach, and he wants the kids to be part of the family and to be part of a program. And I think these guys are really going to miss out on a lot if they go from Alabama to Georgia and Georgia to Florida and then Florida to wherever. They're playing for 3 or 4 schools, and all they're doing is chasing money, and they're not going to have any affiliation, and they're not going to be welcome back on campus one day. I go back to Clemson now. I'm still welcome back there. And there's people that still, and I know it was a long time ago, there's still a lot of people that are my dear friends that are there on campus. People like Bob Mahoney and Don Munson and Bobby Robinson and the list, Byron Harder and, Lance McKinney and people that are around Clemson, been around for Clemson for years and years, and they're still there, and you still have that connection. And I think that's the sad part of where college football and basketball is going now. But, that sometimes that just doesn't mean as much to people as it does me. I'm kind of a sentimental fool when it comes to stuff like that. Man, I love Clemson and what it stands for, and I'm proud to be a part of it. But some of these kids, they're just chasing the Bucks, man. And who's to say? I would have liked to have had, as a number one recruit in the state of Virginia my senior year, I imagine I might have had a pretty good payday out of NIL and things of that nature when I got to Clemson. But and who's to say I wouldn't have taken the money? But I don't, you can't say, because it's just a different world now. It's just different, and not that it's better or worse, but I think it's worse. And so does Dabo. But we go back to our original premise. The NCAA has got to grow a set and come up with some kind of set of rules to get this thing going. And like we talked about, the contract thing is probably the way it's got to go.
So if I were to go back and pull up the 83 Clemson, South Carolina game and go to the part where the brawl is, would I actually see you running around the brawl?
I don't know if you would or not. You might look for 24 in the white jersey, and I'm heading to the South Carolina end zone. I'm trying to think of the one, where the Clemson sideline would be.
Mm-hmm.
Down on, if you're looking from the camera angle, like they always show, it would be the end zone to the right.
Yeah,
because that's where the Carolina cheerleaders would be. Yeah, believe it or not, that was scandalous back in the day, dude. Scandalous. As a matter of fact, they had articles that week in both the Greenville News and the State about us, the relationship. Oh yeah, it was a big deal. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, I wasn't a superstar, but I was, like I said, I was a very solid football player at Clemson, and I was starting, and it was like, the starting free safety and the Carolina cheerleader. Can you imagine if it was like, pick your favorite safety at Clemson is dating a Carolina cheerleader, and they're playing down in Columbia.
Yeah.
It's a human interest story.
Yep.
I mean, I don't even know if it would sell anymore, but back then it was like a kind of a big deal. So. But then she dumped me anyway. When I got cut by the Broncos, I got cut twice in like 2 days. I got cut by the Broncos and I got put on waivers by her at the same time. Bummer.
So, hey, I've got to, as promised, I have to get you to recount the Maury High School story.
Oh, yeah.
From 2012.
Sure. Yeah. So anyway, is his name Ari
Watford?
Watford. Yep. Ari Watford. Yeah. Okay. The young man who's committed. Congratulations. Great kid from Maury High School in Norfolk, Virginia, as we would say back home. And so I went to the Vice Presidential Protective Division of the U.S. Secret Service. I left our counter assault team program where I was the program manager, and I was appointed to the Deputy Special Agent in charge position there with Vice President Biden. And so you have a special agent in charge and you have a deputy. And so in about a year, I became the special agent in charge. And that guy went on to, I guess he went to work for NBC Universal, their director of security there in New York. Anyway, so my first trip after a series of briefings and orientations with VP detail was down to Norfolk, where the vice president had a speaking engagement at a high school. So the day before the trip, as the deputy, I went down as an orientation. I jumped on a C-17 car plane at Andrews, which is now Joint Base Andrews. Jumped on the C-17, flew down to the Naval Air Station with the vehicles, and we drove. We were driving to the high school to check out the advanced preparations at the high school, and so. The lead advance agent, I can't remember his name. Let's go. His name is Larry Williams. Agent Williams. I said, "Hey, Agent Williams, what high school are we going to again here in Norfolk?" And he was like, "We're going to Maury High School, sir." And I'm like, "Maury? Man, you're not going to believe this." I said, "But my junior year at Mount Vernon, we played Maury in the state championship in University Hall in Charlottesville, and we beat them for the state championship." And they're like, "That's cool, sir." And I was like, "Yeah." And I'm like, no, I'm serious. I go, "What are the chances of that happening?" I said, I've never even been here before. I said, "It'll be cool." So we pull up to the high school, and I get out, and the site advance agent meets us there with his police counterparts. And and the field office counterparts from Norfolk. And we walk into the gymnasium, and I go in, and we walk in the gym, and sure enough, there's this banner. It's a 1979 Eastern Region Basketball Champions. And I look at Agent Williams, and I go, hey, you know what the state championship banner is, don't you? It's at Mount Vernon High School up in Alexandria. I said, yes, sir. And, you know, I was like Al Bundy. They're like, hey, this is great, sir. You know, we need to get moving. So anyway, we do our walkthroughs, and we do everything we're supposed to do. Go back to the hotel, get some dinner, get up the next day, go back to the airport. The VP flies in. We motorcade tomorrow, get out. VP does his grip and grins photo, gets up, does a speech, begins to work the rope line, left to right. There's bike rack in front of the stage. And I'm standing in the back observing, because I'm not actually operationally working that detail today, because the special agent in charge is with the VP. So I'm probably off the stage maybe 20 feet. And I see this group of teenager students, and there's 4 or 5 kids, and they're kind of off in the distance. They're about 10 feet off the bike rack, and they're just following the VP around. And they're showing unusual interest, but they're, you know, there's not a threat. I'm just like, well, these kids keep following the VP around when they shake his hand. So he goes left to right, and he starts working the rope line back right to left, shaking hands, taking pictures. And the kids walked up to one of the agents who was posted to the left of the stage, and I could see him talking to him, and then he turns around and points at me, and I could see him saying, you got to ask him. So they come around the bike rack to me, and I walk up, and I go, yeah, can I help you? And they're like, yeah. And this one kid goes, yeah, you got a Secret Service basketball team? And I'm like, what in the world is this kid asking me if I have a Secret Service basketball team? I said, yeah, we don't anymore. I said, we used to. About 15 years ago, when I was on President Clinton's detail, we had a Secret Service basketball team, and we would play in charity events around D.C. And I said, we're actually pretty good, because we had a lot of guys that played either college basketball or basketball in high school. And I was recruited. On a side note, I was not recruited, but shown interest by William and Mary and George Mason and Madison and Towson State, and those schools, because I was that good of a basketball player, but they knew I was playing either football and baseball in college, so they were wasting their time. So I was a really good basketball player. But anyway, so I go, no. I said, but we don't have a team anymore. So the kid goes, he literally listens to me, he goes, well, if you did, he goes, you come down here and we run y'all's asses off the court. I mean, literally said that to me, and I'm like, so now the VP staff, they're standing there and they're listening to this conversation. They're looking at me, and I'm like, I walked over and I said, son, I put my arm around him. I said, do you see that banner up there? It says 1979 Eastern Region Champions. He's like, yeah. I said, do you know why it doesn't say 1979 Virginia AAA State Champions? He goes, no. And I said, because my basketball team, when I was a junior at Mount Vernon, ran your all's asses off the court in Charlottesville. True story. You can't make it up. And his posse around him, they were like, oh, man, oh. And the VP staff, they were howling, laughing. I turned around and go, can you believe this? I said, no, son. I said, actually, I played basketball at Mount Vernon. And he was like, I punched him in the face. He just walked off. And I went outside, took my cell phone, and called my high school basketball coach. He was Don McCool, who just passed away last year. I went to his funeral last year. Coach McCool was living down in Lake Oconee, down in Georgia. He had moved down there, and he was on the golf course. And I called him. I said, Coach, you are not going to believe the conversation I just had. He goes, Bill, what are you doing? I go, you're not going to believe this conversation. And I told him, he thought it was the greatest thing ever. I said, I'm in Maury at Maury High School. He goes, yeah, that's who we beat. You know, because we played Petersburg in the semifinals, and their starting lineup was like 6'7", 6'6", 6'5", 6'4", and 6'2". And we ran a 4 corners slow down game and beat them 48-44. And then the next night we played Maury for the state championship. And that was in the old University Hall in Charlottesville. Now they play at John Paul Jones Arena, but we played them at University Hall and we beat them for the state championship. But funny. I mean, the athletics, even at that, but the chances of that are astronomical. That I would be with the Vice President of the United States, go to a high school, And of all the people that were working with him, he picked me out to tell me that they were going to kill us in basketball. And yeah, fun story. I got a million of those stories. People say I got to write a book. I said, yeah, eventually I do. But I got my friend Larry Williams to help me write it.
There we go.
To be like, yeah, authored by Larry Williams, as told to Larry Williams. There you go.
My name doesn't even have to be on it.
No. Anyway, I'd have trouble getting you'd have to help point me in the right direction and get my thoughts together. But it's all those kind of anecdotes and stories that are just amazing. So anyway, that's that story.
What I can't wrap my mind around beyond the sheer coincidence of it is, of all the people to talk smack to, you do it to Secret Service agents. Like,
I know.
I mean, media were there. Like, you could have done that. I could see you doing it to media, but you're doing it to guys who could probably whip your ass.
Well, I mean, back then I was, I was 6'4", 240, and I'm bench pressing the world, and I know how to kill. I mean, I've been taught by the best people in the world how to eliminate you. I mean, and I just with my bare hands.
Yes.
And I'm like, but people don't. I mean, but I can understand a kid. He's like 16. He's got a Maury basketball T-shirt on, and how 16-year-old boys are. They think they're invincible, and and some people just aren't that bright. And walking to a dude, like, what are you talking? And I was like, no. I just put my arm around him like I was his dad, which I easily could have been, and I said, Do you see that banner up there? I mean, just like that. And I wasn't being flippant or anything, but I was just trying to put him in his place, which is hard to do with a lot of 16-year-old kids. But but like I said, when I wrote that thing, you'd be amazed at what people come up and ask you when you're standing there as a Secret Service agent. Have you shot
can
anybody?
imagine.
Have you ever killed anybody? Of course, the Secret Service is not the FBI or the CIA, but they'll walk up and go, how long have you been in the FBI? You're like, Secret Service. And they're like, have you been with the CIA a long time? You're like, no, we're the U.S. Secret Service. We're totally different. It's just like, but, you're also a public servant. And so you just don't, you try to, and plus too, you engage the public, because you engage them, you can figure out who's actually a threat, who's up to something, who's not up to something, who's asking probing questions as opposed to just stupid questions. People come, how many guys do you have? How many, what's this and what's that? Now we don't give those answers out, obviously. And then when you travel overseas, you really have to be on your guard because, foreign agencies are always probing, and they're looking to see, what our operational procedures are and all that. So you have to be really careful on who you talk to and the information that you give out when you're overseas. So
it's like people,
anyway, that's the,
talking about questions you get. It's like people asking me, hey, where do you tailgate before games? I'm like, unfortunately, I don't get to tailgate.
It's almost like you're insulting, right? It's like, this is my job, people. I'm serious. You know what? I'm a sports writer, and this is my job. Is how I pay my family. But usually I like to go to lot 6 and have 4 or 5 beers before the game and have some chicken wings, and then I mosey on over the press box, when I feel like it. But it's amazing some of the questions that people ask you. Like, no, we don't do that. Just kind of move on with it. So, yeah.
Well, Billy, you got some things to do that are more important than this interview up in Lexington, Kentucky. So, man, have a great time, and just very happy for you and Sophie and your family. Just what an amazing career she's had, and I'm sure you're just incredibly proud.
Yeah, thanks, Larry. The sticking point, like we talked about, was she texted us when they announced the Gator Bowl matchup. She's like, oh my God, I never thought this would happen when I committed to Kentucky. And so that was when she came home for Christmas, we didn't discuss the game at all. She said, Ray Davis is not playing the game. I said, no, I think you're wrong. I think Ray Davis is playing. And that's the only conversation we had about the game. I'm standing here right now, and I'm looking out my hotel window, and I see the sign that says Kroger Field, and we're that close to the football stadium, see the lights for the stadium, University of Kentucky Medical Center. But I'm looking right at Kroger Field right now. It's pretty cool.
That is cool.
So, yeah. Anyway. All right, well, hey, thanks for having me on again. Hello to all my friends out there at Tiger Illustrated, and I hope you all enjoyed this. And thanks for having me again. And tell Chris and Paul I said hey. Okay?
Always enjoy catching up with Billy Davis. He's a regular on the message board at tigerillustrated.com too, and a very valuable contributor, has been for a long time. Appreciate the support of our sponsors for helping make this happen through the years. And of course, thanks to every single one of you for giving it a listen. Really appreciate it. Cheers.